Hi, it's Dawn from Dawn's Dirt. Dirt can mean gardening, dirt can mean animals, dirt can mean homesteading, dirt can mean small scale farming, dirt can mean politics, religion. It can mean anything we want it to mean because it's my show. So, welcome to the show today. Today is a special episode. I'm going to do an episode on canning and home goods and home preserves and how canning can be a value-based business to add to your homestead. And so how you can make money off of canning. So, as many of you know, I was a vegetable farmer for many, many years. I had a 36,000 square foot greenhouse. I did 20 acres of garden, and it's all started back in the day. When I was little, actually, it all started back in the day when I was little. And my dad grew long English cucumbers, and he would pick some of the smaller ones off, and they were, about quarter size around or a little smaller around in diameter. And I got together with a friend of mine and we cut all those cucumbers up and we made pickles out of them, bread and butter pickles. We used my mom's recipe and we were called the Pickle Partners. And so I sold at a farmer's market. So even when I was probably about 15 years old, I started selling things at farmers markets. That's how much experience I have with that farm to table movement. I'm 44 now and I started when I was 15 years old. So started off with the Pickle Partners and my mom did canning and she sold at farmers markets, and then turn around in 2007, me and my ex-husband, we built our greenhouse and built our farm, and I started doing canning with those items as well. So we had too many cucumbers and I was going to farmers markets, and so I started off with relish and bread and butter pickles, and then eventually I added a bunch of other types of pickles to the repertoire, and then eventually I hired someone to do my canning for me, and we had jams and jellies and salsas and relishes and pickles and the whole 9 yards. And so in the year 2020 or 2021, I actually sold $150,000 that year just in canning or canned goods alone. And so you can make a big business from your farm or from your homestead with your canned goods that you preserve. And so that's what we're going to chat about today. So the reason you would want to get into canning and selling canned goods from your homestead is because what do you do with that zucchini that is overrunning your garden? You've got extra zucchini, too many tomatoes. You don't know what to do. You can preserve them up for yourself. And then what do you do with the extra? Well, you make zucchini salsa. And if you put a zucchini into a jar, break it down into a zucchini relish or a zucchini salsa, the amount of money, the dollars that you're going to get for that zucchini is going to be value added, because you're not just getting the couple dollars you would get for a regular size zucchini. You're putting it in a jar and it's going to go from a $2 zucchini to a $10 zucchini. Yes, it takes a bit more work. Yes, it takes a few more supplies. Yes, you need to add a little bit more money to it. But again, a $2 zucchini to a $10 zucchini with a zucchini that you didn't even know what to do with. And so that's why it's called value added to your farm. And so it's so important, and it's such a great resource for small scale farmers and small scale producers to add to their garden or their homestead table at a farmer's market or their online store or whatever platform, their farm stand at the end of the road or whatever they might do. It's a great resource. It's a low barrier entry point to get into some canning. And so you don't need to start with 200 jars of something. You could start with 12 jars of pickles. And so once you sell those 12 jars, you can make 12 more. And so your cost of jars is going to be $1 to $2 per jar. Some extra ingredients, especially if you're using the things off your farm or homestead that you don't normally, that you don't know what to do with, or you just, the value added things. Really, it's a low cost of entry for something to sell. And that jar of goods is going to maybe cost you $3 or $4, even $5. I canned some cherries the other day and I did a cost analysis on it. They were $5 a jar, including the jar, including the cherries, including the sugar per jar to can. And then if I were to sell those jars for $10 per jar, which is not out of the realm of possibility, and they were 500 ml jars, you'd double your money. So I'd make $5 for my labor and the time to sell it. And so you take that times, I did about 25 jars. And it took me about an hour's worth of time. So that's not bad margins and that's not bad time. And so, not that I grow cherries, I bought the cherries in, but still, like, even with the cost of the cherries. So, can you imagine if you grew the zucchini yourself to put in your zucchini relish? Like, your cost per jar is going to go down to like $2 and you can sell it for 10. So, right there. So yeah, it's a low barrier item or low barrier cost of entry item to put it to sell things with. And so yeah, it's shelf stable. So canned goods, once you've done your canned goods. So, and we want to talk about the low risk canned goods. So of course, if you're canning meat, that's higher risk. But if you're doing pickles, jams, salsa is mid risk, mid to low risk. Relish. If you do those items, they are all high in sugar content or high in salt content or high in vinegar content or a little all of the above. Your tomatoes, as long as you're using red tomatoes and not yellow tomatoes, they're very acidic. And so those are low risk canned items. And so, yeah, you're very less likely to make someone sick by doing and starting with those canned goods. And so, and they're shelf stable. They're shelf stable. I sold my farm a year and a half ago, and in my pantry still, I have pickles, dill pickles, that were canned up probably 3 years ago, and we are still eating them, and they are just fine. And so they're easy to transport. They are shelf stable. If you don't sell them one market, you can bring them back to the next one. It's not like, a bag of lettuce where if you didn't sell it, you're going to feed it to the chickens later. And so, yeah, it's just such a great way to get your feet wet into that farm to table sales model. So, like I said, I canned pickles, salsas, jams, jellies, and relishes. I didn't do all of it myself. Eventually, I did hire someone to do a lot of the canning for me. But when it comes to pickles are super easy. And so you can take almost any item that you have in your garden. So pickled beans, pickled carrots, pickled beets, pickled cucumbers, dill pickles, bread and butter pickles, the list goes on and on of pickled garlic, pickled asparagus, pickled peas, the list goes on and on and on as to things that you can pickle. And so you put your items in the jar, the carrots or whatever it is, you put them in your jar, you make a nice brine, you put the brine on top, you fill your jar almost to the top, don't overflow it, don't let anything go above the rim line, and you would stuff it in the jar, put your brine on, wipe the edge of your canning jar lid, put your lid on, and then cook those pickles in your hot water bath, your canning hot water bath, just until they turn color. So you don't want to overcook your pickles because then you're going to have mushy pickles. Everyone likes crunchy pickles, not mushy pickles. And so that's the biggest mistake people make when they're doing pickles is they cook them too long. But yeah, so you can pickle almost anything. I also did salsa. So again, I was a large scale tomato farmer, and good tomatoes make good salsa. And so it's some of the reasons why I had the best salsa around is because I used my good tomatoes in good salsa. I used actually my little grape tomatoes sometimes, and it made like just super sweet, fantastic, good salsa. And so, yeah, salsas are really easy. Jams are really easy. You just take some fruit, boil it up, put it in the jar, pectin, I'm not sure, follow your recipe, and jam up some jars of jam. Relish is really easy. So again, if you've got extra cucumbers, you've got extra zucchini, look up your great recipes. Go to your grandmother's, go to your great grandmother's cookbook, go to that old auntie that lived on a farm many years ago. Go to them and get those old school recipes because those are the ones that sell the best. My grandmother had the best pickle carrot recipe, and it was just such a simple recipe. But it was so good, and it used a little bit of cayenne pepper, but they weren't spicy because my family doesn't like spice, but they just had that little bit of a something to them. And so, yeah, relish is really easy because you could just grind it all up, add some ingredients, boil it up, throw it in a jar, and you got a jar relish. And the green pickle relish that I used to sell at farmers markets tasted exactly like the Bix relish, but mine didn't have the extra chemical ingredients added to it. So it tasted the same, but it was more natural and more authentic, and, a little, even though it had sugar in it, it was more healthy for you. And so then you can also get into your specialty items, your hot pickled peppers, your spicy dill beans, your garlic scapes. I did garlic pesto one year. We didn't pickle it, but we canned and made garlic pesto. And so it was just in my repertoire of canned goods that I sold. So the things that sold the best for me were honestly the pickles. The pickles sold the best. I did them all in 500 ml jars. I did my jams and jellies, hot pepper jellies in 500 ml jars, my pickles in 500 ml jars, the salsas in 500 ml jars, the relishes in 500 ml jars. And then I did like a big mix and match deal. I had all these jars of pickles, jams, jellies, relishes, and I made a huge display. Pile it high, watch it fly. If it gets low, it doesn't sell. And so we made big displays of the jars, and people could mix and match all the jars, and they were not cheap. They were 1 for $12, 3 for $33, or 5 for $50. And that's how I got to the $100,000 or $150,000 mark. Was, people would pick out 3 or 2. They would pick out 2 and go, oh, well, I may as well just get the third one. Or they'll pick out 4 and go, I may as well just go for the 5 for $50 deal. And so it helped sell more produce. And so, yeah, the display was super beautiful. So I would have like all the different colors. So if I had a corn relish beside a green relish beside, a red relish, or I didn't actually have a red relish, and then if I had, pickled carrots beside dill pickles, beside pickled beets, beside bread and butter pickles, I just went and made my colors it was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful display. I got professional jars from a professional building. And my jars were just a clear glass jar with a simple black lid, and I had a beautiful label on top. And so my display looked really, really, really sharp and really, really, really good. It was more about the product inside the jar and less about the label. And so, yeah, just a beautiful display. But if you had one jar left of something, this is really interesting if you're getting into sales here. If you have one jar left of something, it's not going to sell. So the last jar or the last box or the last something on the shelf is just not going to sell. And so, yeah, that's just pile it high, watch it fly. And the last one, it just, yeah, for whatever reason, the psychology of people when they're buying and selling is quite odd. And so, yeah, really, really interesting. Yeah. So I used a lot of my mother's recipes and my grandmother's recipes and those old school recipes. And the weirdest thing we ever pickled up was I had these fantastic small grape tomatoes. We called them candied tomatoes. And we pickled some of them up. So we did pickled canned tomatoes. And I'll be honest with you, I thought they were disgusting. But some people really liked them. And so we'd sample them at a farmer's market, and most people would be like, oh, no, because it was a texture thing. For me, it was a texture thing. I don't like soggy tomatoes. I like good solid tomatoes. And by the time you can them up, they were just soggy and gross. And so I personally didn't like them, but a small handful full of people did. And it was made out of the extra grape tomatoes that I had. And so it's, again, value added. So when you have your farm or your homestead and you're growing produce, like a lot of the vegetable producers, the large scale vegetable producers that I know, they do canned goods on the side. So there's several farmers around the Innisfail area here in Alberta, and one grows carrots. And so what does she can up? She does a lot of pickled carrots, all different varieties of pickled carrots. Another woman, she grows peas and asparagus. So what does she have as value added off her farm? Pickled peas and pickled asparagus and everything in between, the soups and the cans and the jars and the frozen and the this and then that. It's all value added stuff. And what they're doing is they're taking, a small bunch of carrots, putting it in a jar, and instead of getting, $2 for those carrots, you'd get $10. And so many smart vegetable farmers do this. They can up what they have. I know of another guy that does apples, and he does apple chips. And so It's all the value added items. And so when you think of your farm or you think of your homestead, you're going to choose the things that do best for you. And when you have extra, can them up. And so you can plan your garden and your space accordingly as well. If you're really good at growing cabbage, you might want to think about selling sauerkraut as well. And so, yeah, just figure out your timing and your planning and your seasonality and what you've got and just can it up. So with the canning setup, I started off really, really teeny tiny. Well, at first I started off with the Pickle Partners. And so we were watching TV, cutting up the bread and butter pickles. Then I switched to doing it myself after I had babies. And so I had my babies in my home and, while they were napping or even while they were up, Mama had to work. And so I made relish in my own home or bread and butter pickles or whatever it was in my own home. And then eventually I hired my mom to do the canning for me. And so she did all kinds of canning for me and canned and canned and canned and piles and piles and piles. And she enlisted my children. My children were young teenagers at that point. And so she made my kids work for her. And then eventually when she retired from doing my canning, because it got so big, the canning portion of my business of my farm got so big, that she couldn't keep up. And so then I hired a different guy to do it. And he ended up eventually doing all of my canning for me. And I would take in skids of produce, or take in skids of canned goods that I would sell. And I didn't necessarily even grow everything that went in the jars. So that's a bit of a misconception as well. People think that, I have to wait till, August to can my pickled carrots. No, if you really need to, go to the store, pick up some carrots, put them in the jar and can them up. It's about the value added product and it's about having something on your table to sell. And you can just be really honest. When people ask me, did I grow everything that was in the jars? I was like, sure, I did not. I did not grow everything that was in the jars because I couldn't. I physically couldn't. I mean, the jams, I didn't grow that fruit. And so, yeah, just be really honest. That's the biggest thing with customers. And when you're in sales, like be super honest and just tell the truth. And people will still buy. So we did it in big batches eventually, but again, like I said earlier in the show, you can start off with 12 jars of something and work your way bigger. Dill pickles were a little bit trickier. You can only have those dill pickle cucumbers at one season of the year. And so you want to kind of plan ahead for that a little bit, but yeah, so do big batches. Make sure, this is one big tip, make sure you water bath it all. You just want to make sure that your jars are sealed and sealed really, really, really well. Because, the last thing you want is a customer to get a jar home and, the lid pops super easily and you got some mold underneath there and that just is not going to go well for your business. So make sure you water bath or water can or your jars really well. So don't overcook them because you don't want mushy pickles, but just make sure you bring them up to a boil. That'll get them hot enough so that they seal really well. And then, the legalities of it. You want to make sure that you follow your local food handling bureaucratic. I don't do well with bureaucracy. I really, really don't, but you can follow your local bureaucratic rules and regulations. And so I actually I called the health inspector out. So this little tangent, a little side note, a little like, oh, squirrel, let's chat about this. But it was ironic here in the province of Alberta. I needed a food handling permit, and to be able to sell it, not just farmers markets, but public markets here in Alberta, and to put the canned goods into my stores. The jars had to be done in a commercial kitchen, which was fine. We did all that. We figured it out. We did that just fine. So that was not the issue. But ironically enough, if I sold my eggs, which were uninspected, and I sold my canning in the same booth, one was allowed and one wasn't. And so I either had to pick, and none of the health inspectors really followed the rules because, I'm not going to be quiet about it either. It was just so stupid. But, eggs fall under no rules at farmers markets and canned goods fall under rules. And so I did end up getting away with both, but the bureaucracy just didn't make sense. And so make sure you just go to your health inspector. And the best way to approach a health inspector, if you're going to a health inspector on these things, is this is what I would like to do. How can you help me get the things and have the tools in place that I need in order to pass everything that you want me to pass in order to be able to sell? And so if you approach it as a question rather than an an answer and a know-it-all. I mean, I did have a health inspector tell me she didn't like me one time, but that was after many years of being in the industry, and I got a little mouthy after a while, and I just knew how to deal with them. But so don't be mouthy right off the bat. But yeah, so just make sure you know what their rules are. Make sure your labels are really clear. Make sure you have your name and your phone number or your address or an email address or some way to contact you. Your list of ingredients is so important. You know, if there's an allergy or something, refrigerate after opening. Those are really good things on your label to have, just to cover your back as well. I mean, ironically, here we are a year and a half later after I sold my farm, and I'm still getting those phone calls from different people. Do you have a jar of that salsa or that jar of the mustard relish? And I'm like, I sold the farm a year and a half ago, so no. But people will remember. It's that brand recognition. And so if you have good branding on your jar, they're going to go, oh yeah, those pickles or that relish or salsa or whatever it is so good. I'm going to phone that phone number and see if I can get more. And canned goods are really good as those teacher gifts or those, the gift for the person that has everything. And so at the end of the school year, we always gave either vegetables or canned goods for teachers' gifts. And yeah, it was just so simple and easy. Another girlfriend of mine, she has a Saskatoon farm that she doesn't do a whole lot with. She does a tiny U-pick, but she picked Saskatoons and she jarred up and made Saskatoon syrup, just because, for the sole purpose, not even to sell it, but the sole purpose to give it out as gifts. You know, they'd go to someone's house. Oh, thank you so much for having us. Here's a jar of syrup. And so they just make really good gift ideas. And so even if you're not doing canned goods to sell, and even if you're just doing it from your own pantry, what a better gift than a homegrown, home canned jar of, your grandmother's pickle recipe. So good. Yeah, so labels are really important. Your display and your setup at your farmer's market booth, like we talked about, is really important. The pricing is really important. We talked about that as well. Mix and match the prices, mix and match the jars. That way you're going to get more volume sales. Make your display pretty, and pretty sells better. Good signage. If it's not priced, it won't sell. That's a big thing too. If it's not priced, it won't sell. And yeah, you're going to get those repeat buyers and that loyal customer base. So here's the thing. You can do this too. I built my canning side hustle. Like I did $150,000 a year in canned goods, but I did over $1 million worth of a year off my farm in vegetables and canned goods and, eggs. And I did even sell some lamb at one point too. Hey friends, on Dawn's Dirt, we get real about growing food, farming, homesteading, living free, and digging into the stuff that actually matters. If you're loving the dirt we're dishing out, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow on your favorite social media platforms. That's how we keep growing this community of badass, soil-covered, chicken-loving, freedom-chasing humans. Like and subscribe to me on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it. Come be part of the movement. So that's the thing. Like, anyone can do this, right? You can do this in your home kitchen just to get going on a small scale, build your network of people, and get some money rolling through the door. I'll be honest with you, I canned up those cherries, and the first thing inside of me as an entrepreneur went tick, 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 tick. I could make money off of that. And I could. I'm not going to, because, I've got other irons in the fire, and it's just not a priority to me right now. But, canning is such a missed opportunity on a homestead. And so you can do that too. If you can figure out how to can grandma's, pickle recipe, you can make money off of your homestead. It's a great side hustle for a stay-at-home mom, because you can do most of it in your kitchen, depending on the rules and regulations, but you can do most of it in the kitchen, and you can sell on Saturdays when your husband's home from work. You don't have to have a homestead or a small farm to do this. You can do this out of your city block kitchen. So many people make the mistake of, I don't have my homestead yet. I don't have my land yet. But, the truth is, grow a garden in your backyard and sell off some of the produce. You have the space for it. Can some goods in your home and sell off the canned goods. You can do this. You can make a home-based business, a home-based homesteading business, even if you live in the city. So don't think that the land and the cow and the goat and the milk is the goal. That's not the goal. The goal is to create a little bit of extra side income off the spaces you have. And that's where I'm a homestead coach and I'm a homestead business coach. I help people look past, the space they have to how can I do this for someone else? And, y'all can do it. Trust me, if you got a little work ethic, you got a little tactician in you, you can do this. You can make money. Yeah. This has been a great episode, actually, just teaching you how to just think outside the box, come up with something different, come up with the value added items. And so when you think of your space, your homestead, your situation in your life, just put on your entrepreneurial business brain and let's think about the creative ways that you can produce yourself, because all of you can. If you jumped on a jumpstart call with me and had a 5-minute conversation or, half an hour conversation with me, even with a few simple questions, I could figure out what business you should be in and what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are and, the direction you should go. And so if that's something that interests you, send me a DM, put something in the comments, let me know, and let's jump on a jumpstart call to get your home-based business going. But yeah, if you just think outside the box, you can do this too, and then there again too, when we start going outside of the box again, there's tallow and there's baked goods and there's all kinds of flower gardens. There's all kinds of ways. Go to your local farmer's market and see what other people are doing. And, let's base something off of that. So I do think that I firmly, firmly, firmly believe, and especially with the way society is going, is that everyone should be a producer, not everyone should be a farmer. And that's a quote from Dakota Cohen, and I agree. And so you can do this too. You can become a producer. You can get something that you can do in your backyard, in your home, to barter and trade with if shit ever hits the fan. And reach out to me if you need some help with that. So thanks so much for listening. Great little episode here today. Just wanted to impart my information and, the things that are going on in my head and take some of my experience and share it with you. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing, is because, we need more small home-based businesses. We need more small farmers, and we need more people producing, bartering and trading and building communities. Thanks so much for tuning in today.